Hello, this is part 1 of Unit 9 about the atmosphere. Before we get started, I want to remind you of a couple things. Please remember to pause the video at any point when needed to be able to do the work. Please remember you can always go back and re-listen to something if you need to. Please remember you should be playing the video all the way through. Please do not try to skip over or move forward more quickly. And finally, please make sure you stop and get stamps when you are told to. Please do not save them until the end, but do them along the way as you're told to. So speaking of stamps, that's where we're going to start today. Please turn to your grade sheet and on page 3 in your packet. And I want you to take a second to look at where you're at. If any of these assignments are not finished yet, your cover, your page 13, your grade tracker, please stop the video right now, finish them, and get the stamps before moving on. If you have these done and need the stamps, please pause the video right now and come get the stamps before moving on. If you have all 3 stamps, go ahead and proceed. I'm going to have you turn to your table of contents, and because not everyone's working at the same time, I'm just going to have you add your own dates for these pages in your packet that you're going to be doing today. So go ahead and fill in the dates for pages 4 and 5, and as you finish, you can turn to pages 4 and 5. We're going to start with the notes on the top of page 5. So the atmosphere is a thin layer of gases that form a protective covering around the Earth. The word atmosphere comes from 2 root words. Atmo means gas or vapor, and sphere, you're probably already familiar with, means circle. The atmosphere is really important, and it's important for several reasons. First of all, this is where we get our oxygen to breathe, so that's pretty important. Our bodies require oxygen. You might remember that from living here on Earth, but also from life science, that each one of our cells needs oxygen to be able to do what it needs to do to keep us alive. It also protects us from the harmful radiation coming from the sun, the solar radiation, that would burn us and damage us really, really fast without this protective layer. It helps keep our temperature stable here on Earth and warm. If you go to other planets that don't have an atmosphere like this, if it's in the sun, it's really, really hot. If it's not in the sun, it's really, really cold. Ours stays relatively even. Although we know we have our seasons, but in general, the temperature of the Earth stays relatively stable and warm. And finally, it protects us from meteorites. Rocks and debris that come in through space. It actually burns up tons of things that would normally come and hit the Earth. And just for evidence of that, look at the moon and look at all the craters on the moon and some of the other planets that don't have an atmosphere for that to happen. Now, the atmosphere is made up of a mixture of gases, actually many different gases, although there are some that are maybe a little more important than others. If you see you've got this little pie graph here, I'd like you to fill this in. And this big part of the pie here is representing nitrogen. And nitrogen actually makes 78% of our atmosphere. So even though we all know about oxygen being really important, it is, nitrogen is actually the most abundant gas in the atmosphere. Oxygen is actually second place. So oxygen makes up about 21%. And then for right now, we're just going to call that rest of it other. And other is like the other 1%. And that's a whole mixture of lots and lots of different gases. The other 1% consists of a whole mixture of things. These are just a few of the things that make up the rest, but water vapor, carbon dioxide, argon, and methane are the big ones. All right, at this point, I want you to pause for a second and use the colored pencils to add color to your pie graph. All right, as you finish up with that, the last thing on the bottom of page 5 mentions that we have layers. The atmosphere is divided into layers based on changes in temperature. And we're going to go into a lot more detail on that now over on page 4. So page 4 is also part of your notes in this case. We're going to do a diagram of the layers of the atmosphere here on page 4. So what you're going to need for this, you're going to want to have the colored pencils out because you're going to be using them throughout this time. You're going to be adding lots of information and labels to this diagram. And also you'll notice down in the lower left-hand corner, there's a little key there. And I'd like you to add the word key so you know that's what that is. The little triangles before each one is a symbol, a Greek symbol called delta. And we use that to say change in temperature. So when you see the delta T, the delta D, the delta P, that means change in temperature, change in density, change in pressure. Okay? So we'll be using those. You'll notice up on your table up at the top that those symbols are there. We'll be adding some information about those as we go along.